came out of left field, man. Well, like I mentioned, well, I haven't mentioned it, but I was with David Crosby since '98, and we were in a band called CPR with Jeff Pevar and James Raymond, who is his son, who I met in college. That's a whole nother story. But we had this band, and then that kind of went into David and Graham Nash made a bunch of records together, and those guys wanted to tour Europe. So James calls me and says, "Hey, those guys want to tour Europe. They want to have you play." And they got Dean Parks on guitar and Andrew Ford on bass and myself. So we went to Europe. My first time playing that book, because that's different than Crosby's book, and it's different than Crosby, Stills and Nash. It's like they had their own couple record, Wind on the Water and all that beautiful stuff. Just the two of them. So I was lucky enough to get that gig, and we went to Europe and toured Europe. And when we were in England, we played at the Royal Festival Hall. And I joked about it. Remember we talked about it in the other interview where I changed out my heads that day? And I think, I don't know if you remember that, but I was like, yeah, I changed out my heads. The drum sounded really great. And, I was kind of nervous because it was London and, so, but that show went really, really well. And after the show, Davig Gilmore was at the show. Wow. And John Paul Jones and a bunch of local, great.
No pressure.
No pressure, the London cats.
John Paul Jones. That doesn't happen. Sorry, I had to.
It was weird. It was weird.
That just doesn't happen.
Yeah. It was great, and it happened to be a good show. It just was good. Everything clicked. There were some funny bits in there too, because Crosby. I remember Crosby goes on and he introduced half the band. He introduced me. He says, "Yeah, Stevie's been my drummer for whatever. We're buddies. Love having him." And no, he didn't call me Stevie. He called me Richard by accident. He goes, "Richard to Stanislaw," and everybody laughed. And then the band's like, and then Graham gets on the mic, goes, "Richard," and then turned into this whole like comedy routine. So that was kind of funny because it kind of showed this human element of the band, whatever. But I just thought it was a funny moment. But anyway, fast forward. God, that was a crazy year. When I was in Europe, I don't want to bore you guys with this stuff, but when I was in Europe, I get an email from a friend of mine saying, "Hey, Loggins and Messina are holding auditions for a reunion tour." And I said, "Well, I'm in Europe right now with Crosby Nash." I said, "When are you going to be back?" So anyway, I went home. I booked a audition for that, and luckily I got that gig, which was out of left field as well. I'm on tour with Loggins and Messina over the summer. So anyway, Davig Gilmore was at the tour, at that show, and saw me